Human beings are stories, and stories are human beings. Neither can exist without the other. Either word of mouth or pen of man is needed to create stories, and man's existence and history depends on story. Because both people and stories are birthed, it is only fitting then that both man and story are both children. Let me explain. In my first digital media project, I focused around the image of children. Every story we read up until that point resonated a hit in me involving children in some fashion. Each forced the listener to put themselves in the shoes of either a parent losing a child or in the shoes of a child being separated from their parent. My second digital media project revolved around this idea of reciprocal altruism. This theory encompasses a strong belief that people who do good to others will receive good in return, and that people who do not do good to others will in turn be punished and cast out from society. I began to demonstrate this coming into play with Joe the Bully and Jason. But how could these images make sense together and help me promote peace and justice in my life? The answer is really simple. Listening to individual stories and eliminating cynicism. In my opinion, every person has a story to tell. Every action they commit, every opinion they share, and everything that they do is set off by some generator in their brain that was created in them by something or someone. That's what I meant earlier when I said people and stories are interchangeable. In One Without a Story, Teague ends up in these wacky adventures that take him away from his dear home. He seems pretty miserable throughout the story, being away from home and all, and keeps being burdened by other people to do all of these things that he clearly doesn't want to do. Now, imagine you were one of the people asking Teague to help you out and saw his reaction as a negative one. You'd probably say, wow, this guy's a real jerk. In reality, however, Teague has a story that explains why he's being a negative Nancy and why he'd rather be home. While by the end of the story Teague's altruism was reciprocated, if the people had listened to Teague to begin with, he might have found his way home with their help and in turn helped them out, still completing the cycle in the end. Horton Hears a Who emphasizes the second part of my solution, eliminating cynicism. The Sour Kangaroos and the Wickersham brothers didn't believe that there was a city of people living on a clover, and came at Horton with huge amounts of cynicism. This caused all sorts of problems and almost led to the elimination of a lot of innocent people. Had the Kangaroo and Wickersham brothers listened to Horton's story and not been so cynical, it would have saved Horton a great deal of anguish and would not have put the Whos in harm's way at all. Now, putting all of this together, I realize that it isn't always easy to listen to every person's story, and sometimes it's hard not to be cynical about certain people, especially in today's cluster of media. However, I believe that a solution for all of this lies in children. Like I mentioned in Digital Media Project 1, people's fascination with children can stem from their blissful nature, cute innocence, or countless other things. The one thing about children that people seem to forget is that we were all children at one point. Somehow our world forgets that we were blissful and innocent once too. Why should an infinite amount of knowledge and exposure, along with a few added feet of size, change our perception of one another? It would be foolish to say that every person has pure intentions throughout life. We wouldn't have wars, conflicts, and we certainly wouldn't have a need for classes like these if this were the case. I believe my calling in life is to remind people that every person has a story. I'm not perfect, but I try to avoid cynicism as much as possible, and remind myself that everybody does have a story. I always encourage people to trust one another more than not. Like in Horse of Power, when the hunter takes a leap of faith, both literally and figuratively, into the pot of boiling water, and he ends up for the better in the end. The punishment for cynical mentality is evident in society, whether it's ostracization, loss of friendship, or, on a larger scale, war. Maybe I'll try and write children's books one day, to try and help promote this idea of everyone's different, but the same concept. It's close to impossible to convince everyone of my idea, but the one thing that remains true is that in the end, children are just man's way of continuing their story. The long and winding road that leads to your door